Councilman Mitchell, I'm trying to help her out. She's like, whoo, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So seconded by Councilman Mitchell. All in favor by the sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. We have a number of ordinances on final reading. Madam Clerk, 6A, B, C, D has been already read into a record. Okay? So now we'll move on to ordinance on first reading. 6A, please.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 24, Section 2449, relating to use of handheld mobile telephone or personal digital assistant prohibited while driving. Chapter 24, Section 2450, prohibited use of handheld mobile telephone in marked school zone. And Chapter 24, Section 2451, prohibited use of mobile telephone with hands-free device by persons under 18.
Seeing no questions, we'll now move on to resolutions. Madam Clerk, 7A, B, C, D, E, and F has already been read into record. So now we'll move on to resolution 7G.
A resolution amending resolution number 29082, adopting a public records policy to include recent state law changes to Tennessee Code annotated Section 10750-4A and to include revised forms attached to said policy.
Seeing no questions, that will conclude that part of our agenda session. There is no departmental report today, but we will have a report from Maura Sullivan, our COO, regarding the city response to this past weekend's water emergency, or lack thereof.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you allowing me a little time to talk about this. This weekend, as we know, our Tennessee American Water Company did experience a break of a main water line that did create a water emergency for many in our community. And I wanted to take a moment to report to you all about the activities of your city government. Always at the top of our mind this weekend was the directive of Mayor Burke that came very early in the process to keep our community informed and to support our residents. Within 1 hour of the break, we had tanker teams in place strategically for fire protection, because you know, without water flowing to those hydrants, we wouldn't have fire protection at all of our homes and all of our commercial buildings. So we immediately, with the help of Public Works and water that we already had on hand and tanker trucks for fire protection, we placed those tanker trucks that we had throughout the city in case they were needed. We immediately reached out to Tri-State Mutual Aid. Thank you to the mayor and this council for allowing us to enter into that agreement with Tri-State Mutual Aid, and it sure paid off. Within 12 hours, multiple strike teams located tankers and teams from all over East Tennessee came to our aid. Not just this immediate area, but also Knoxville and the Upper Cumberland areas. We had strike teams and tankers throughout our entire area ready to help. Other partners jumped in immediately as well. TVA loaned us a 5,000-gallon pump that would pull water directly out of the Tennessee River should we need water to fight fires. We provided bulk water to the aquarium and to the hospitals so that they could keep their chillers going. You have to have water to keep those big industrial chillers going, otherwise they wouldn't have had AC for patients and for the animals and fish and the marine life in the aquarium. We provided equipment to Tennessee American Water to help them make their repairs. Again, all of this was done before lunchtime on Friday. YFD immediately pivoted, closing centers in less affected areas of the city for staff to help out in the most affected parts of our town. We arranged for bottled water and porta potties to be delivered to the most affected areas so that people could have water available and the use of restroom facilities. Over the course of the 4 days, this coordinated water distribution effort gave out more than 500,000 bottles of water. This equates to 20,833 cases or 386 pallets of water. Many of you, maybe all of you, I'm looking around, I saw at water distribution places, and thank you for your efforts of getting volunteers to help us and for personally loading and unloading water and getting water to giving us names of people that you knew were shut-ins that we needed to get water to, and your help with getting volunteers there. Over 90 CPD police officers and 20 cadets volunteered their time to participate in this massive operation that resulted in the sharing of this almost 1 million bottles of water to our neighbors. Water from surrounding water districts was shared with us, collected by Public Works so that we could fill these tanker trucks as we needed them. We added porta potties and distributed water in public parks so our residents without homes could still access public toilets and stay hydrated. The Tennessee Federation of Fire Chaplains came from as far away as Memphis with shower and bathroom facilities on trailers. We coordinated and led public outreach, media relations, and social media to ensure that the public knew what was happening and how to help each other. ECD coordinated with the Chattanooga Housing Authority and senior and low-income housing units, public and private, throughout the incident to monitor water availability and let us know where to deliver water and porta potties for their use. Each of our city departments contributed to this response in this community emergency and lent a hand, whether it was in communication, fire suppression, delivering water, answering calls, finding porta potties and water suppliers, or just providing a place for people to gather to help each other out. I'm very proud of the work that our departments, that your departments, that our departments of city government did, and I hope that you'll join me in applauding their work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and all our team who was out there working so hard and diligently to make sure people were taken care of during this very challenging time. Councilman Gilbert.
Mark, I just want to thank you and your staff and everybody that was involved. That water did come in handy at the hospitals. I mean, it was a challenging thing. I know this was a bad situation, but we was ready. So that was a good thing to show that we are ready for something like that. Hope it never happen again, but if it did, we are ready for it. So I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And we train a lot. We do a lot of planning, and we do a lot of training, and I was also gratified to see that our training and our planning paid off. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. I put this in an email, but also hats off to everybody who brought forth their best in a time when we really needed it. And I think, so I just want to say congratulations. I think that government really stepped up. And also, I wanted to know if you knew any of the numbers that we had from the private sector that donated. I had inquired about where the water was coming from, and I understand that a lot of private companies, logistics companies, beverage companies, donated and just kept donating. I mean, there was no end, and I think that's just also to be applauded. And we came together as a community. I'm very proud of what I saw. Thank you for your hard work.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We did. We had Coca-Cola donations. We had Tennessee American Water donations. We had TEMA, Tennessee Emergency Management, donations of water. And then, as you say, other companies were bringing, people were just showing up with water. So we haven't gathered, some we may not even know. We may never know who all brought water, but we did have, it was amazing to watch.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Maura, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now, that closes another segment of our agenda session. Now I will turn it over to Chairman Mitchell for Public Works and Transportation Committee.
Can I get approval of minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Looks like we've got some resolutions today, but none next week, but we'll start with Public Works resolutions. Hello, Mr. Holland.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman,
It's great to see you.
members of the council. Good to see you. And we give me just one moment to talk about the weekend and
Sure.
recognize
Absolutely.
somebody. Every time I went to the, first of all, I think all of our first responders and everyone that was involved was super this weekend. And I didn't see anyone ever say no or let me get back to you. It was just about how we could help and how the city responded from the leadership all the way down through the organization. But every time I was at the Emergency Operations Center, I saw Maura Sullivan, Carrie Hayes, Rochelle, Chief Hyman, and I was there on and off several times. There were other people I saw regularly, Danny Jones from the police department. But those were key individuals who never really left and seemed like they put in, and Chief's nodding. I know you guys had many more staff. We'd love to recognize everybody, but from your leadership, those are the folks I saw when I was there intermittently through the weekend, from Friday morning on. But I just want to say thank you to Maura and all the other leaders that were there intermittently, Chief Roddy and many of his folks helping with water distribution, the fire department, our department, Bill Payne. I think I could keep going and mentioning people's names, but it really was a terrific effort from the city's response to help people. And I just thought it was important to recognize, a lot of times we recognize the folks who are out there doing the work and they do an amazing job, but our leadership was there on point, I think, through the event and coordinating very well with Tennessee American and the county. So I just wanted to applaud the leadership that I saw there and thank them.
You know, a key trait of a leader is someone who recognizes leadership. So thank you for your efforts also.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get moving now. Please read 7H.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation for financing of capital construction projects for the Department of Public Works required by the consent decree for the Interceptor sewer system for an amount not to exceed $30 million.
See no lights? Guess we're not really concerned about District 1 anyway today, are we? Okay, let's move on. Yeah. Please read 7I.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number M180020201 to Tri-State Roofing Contractors, LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, replacement roofing system for the Bessie Smith Center in the amount of $299,544.80, plus a contingency amount of $30,000 for an amount not to exceed $329,544.80.
Councilman Byrd, are you going to share this with Councilperson Coonrod? All right, very good. All right, very good. No questions. 7J, please.
A resolution to amend Resolution Number 30018 so as to award contract number S18012-201 to Clean Co. Construction of Tennessee Incorporated of Chattanooga, Tennessee, Appling Street drainage improvements in the amount of $1,068,084 with a contingency in the amount of $100,000 for a total amount not to exceed $1,168,084.
That's a lot of drainage improvement. I guess they need it over there on Appling, don't they? Okay. Councilperson Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Now, we can share this one since it's actually close to my district. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go to, oh, here we go. Here come the questions. Let's go to K.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute a mutual operation agreement with Birchwood 2, LLC, for use of certain facilities and infrastructure at the city landfill located at Birchwood.
Bing, 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 bing. That would be Councilperson Coonrod first. Okay. You not on? Let me do this. We're gonna have to go through it again. Okay, now you're active.
Thank you, Chair. Responding back to the email about K, could we get a copy of what that agreement is? And is it just, what are the other facilities that we're using outside of the landfill, or is it just the landfill?
I'd be happy to respond to that, Councilwoman. First of all, we did look at the backup documents, and it looked like they were scanned in incorrectly, so I'd be happy to get you a full copy of that this afternoon, of the agreement with Birchwood 2 LLC. I would like to summarize a little bit about this agreement so that you have a better, a broader depth of what that agreement looks like. So we already have established with Birchwood 2 LLC a company who owns a property adjacent to the city landfill at Birchwood. That property was landlocked and did not have egress, ingress. We have already, in the last year or year and a half ago, this body allowed an easement across the landfill property to access Birchwood 2's property. That egress involves the 50-50 split of any cost related to road repairs or any other access point that they use. This new agreement, and the reason that let me back up, the reason that easement was important to Birchwood 2, a separate company from what the city is operating, a little confusing language with the name of the landfill. We call ours Birchwood Landfill. This is Birchwood 2, a non-competer with the city landfill. It's a C&D landfill. Ours is a municipal or Class 1 landfill where we have to deposit, where we deposit only municipal garbage that creates leachate. A C&D landfill is for construction and demolition debris only. It was important to the city to enter into the easement. The additional landfill helps create competition for other C&D landfills. The city does not own a C&D landfill. We only operate the municipal solid waste landfill. The agreement that we have drafted with Birchwood 2 LLC is mutually beneficial for the city and Birchwood 2 LLC. The benefits to Birchwood 2 LLC are beneficial uses of the scale house jointly with the city with a 50-50 split, use of the scales that are existing with a 50-50 split. These are, and use of the wheel wash, which is necessary when you're operating a landfill to clean the tires from the trucks as they enter onto the highway. These are cost avoidances for the city, in the city's perspective. These are cost avoidances to prohibit or to limit the amount of utilities or operating costs and related to the scales, the roads, the wheel wash, and any other accesses. The scale house will be operated by one of their own employees. We'll split the cost of all the utilities related. They will also pay the city $1 per ton that's diverted to the C&D landfill, so it's additional source of revenue. They will cover the cost of their scale operator, his salary and benefits, scale maintenance, wheel wash maintenance, interior road maintenance, utilities. Annually, the contract would be negotiated based on CPI. The fencing and gates to secure and separate the C&D access from municipal solid waste landfill access are already established. There is a cost avoidance to the city, like I said, for the scale operator, the scale maintenance, and wheel wash maintenance. I can field questions about this, but I did want to articulate that that the city, besides avoiding some of our operating costs, really don't have, aren't benefiting from the agreement outside of the cost avoidance and a small source of revenue for the city. So we thought it was mutually beneficial to allow them, they already have the easement in perpetuity to access the site, so this is just for the mutual benefit of the scale use and wheel wash. I may have overstated that it's just kind of a mutually beneficial contract.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, councilperson?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Can Councilman Gilbert go first? I've got the,
I had my question answered, thank you, sir.
okay, great. Councilperson Gilbert.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Justin,
Yes, sir.
is this the same company under a different name that had it several years ago?
There was, and what I want to articulate, what Councilman Gilbert's referring to was a landfill that was adjacent to the city's landfill. And this is, to my knowledge, not associated with the parties previously who operated the landfill. I do see a representative of the Birchwood 2 operating agreement, or Birchwood 2 LLC, who helped us work on the operating agreement. They, as far as I know, they are not tied to, nor were they ever tied to the previous C&D landfill.
So you're saying that they previously sold it to this company right here?
No, sir. These are separate entities, separate companies, and to my knowledge, separate investors and all together.
So the company that we had several years ago, are they still there?
Let me make, and Bill reminded me to articulate this point. Those are two separate properties. The previous C&D landfill was closed that operated adjacent to our landfill. This is a new landfill that is on county property. It just is landlocked and was using easements through the city's landfill to operate. And they needed those easements in order to get their permits. So we established those easements through the city landfill. This is an operating agreement that, in talking through those easements many years ago, we decided that we would get the easements established so that they could work on their permit to see if they could even be viable there. They had a community input session. They also had to go through the state's permitting cycle and process. They are now developing that portion of the landfill to begin operating, and they need scales. They would either have to bring scales in or a mutual beneficial agreement with the city to use our scales.
Can you give us a breakdown, not right now, but later on, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, of the contract itself when it says what they're paying and what we're getting out of it, and also the previous company, what they was paying and what we got out of it?
I just broke down what the cost split looks like for maintenance. Some of that is unknown because we don't know how much that company would bring in. So there is $1 per ton diverted to the C&D landfill. It is a split cost for the scale operator, the scale maintenance, and a wheel wash, and for maintenance of the interior landfill roads that they have an easement to access.
How long we had this? This is the first agreement we have with this company. Has it been a second agreement, a third agreement, or what?
This is a newly formed company for this landfill.
So this is the first time we ever dealt with this company at all.
Yes, sir.
So we don't have any background for its pricing or anything, because this is the very first time.
Yeah, the person who previously owned the other C&D landfill, to my knowledge, is not involved in this landfill, and it is formed as an LLC with a couple of partners who I've been working with City Attorney Maleg.
Can you give me a breakdown of the old company, what we was charging them, what they were charging us, the agreement they had with them?
I will try to find all those details and send that to you. I'll
Okay.
send you all the details of an agreement that I can find.
Okay, because not too long ago, we had that agreement with them, several years ago.
Probably 6 to 8 years ago.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
You okay?
Yes.
Till the next one.
Yes.
I don't see any more questions. We'll move on. Let's go to L, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute a contract with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for Phase 4 of the Chattanooga Flood Preparedness Study for an amount of $300,000 and authorizing the city's 50% match in the amount of $150,000.
Councilman Gilbert.
Too much reverb in her mic. Mine too. I appreciate it, sir. Justin,
Yes, sir.
what is the area that this is going to cover?
I'd like so Bill Payne has been working, this is phase 4 of this flood preparedness study with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Bill Payne's been at the root of this for many years. He has Marty Hawkins also with him, who's been the project lead. So I'd ask Bill to come up and talk about a couple of the details on how we got here and what this phase of the project covers.
Thanks, Justin. Chairman, Councilman Gilbert. This particular scope, so we have gone through multiple sections of this with the Army Corps, and so that's a lot of that has been updating and making sure that all of the flood study analysis. So when we talk about flood studies, we're talking about major flood events, like the ones that one of the most recent ones was in 2003. So when we're talking about 100-year flood events, and so that's the level that we're talking about. So we're talking about those larger catastrophic events. So we have updated many of those models, and we began with South Chickamauga Creek. We have also looked at lots of different, trying to get some additional information on all of these in order to determine, as those floodwaters rise and as they get to different elevations, what are the pieces of infrastructure that are, or the critical facilities that get impacted by those floodwaters as they rise. That's in an effort so that we can help provide that information better to the EOC and to all the various emergency responders that have to go out. We moved at that point. We've also then continued that work in North Chickamauga Creek, Lookout Creek, Mountain Creek, and Chattanooga Creek, and that was in phase 2. And then in phase 3, we've also been doing some flood insurance study updates. So we have submitted information to make sure that most recent information is all available with FEMA. So for phase 4, one of the things that was done in phase 3, for example, because we talk about these large watershed areas. So when we talk about South Chickamauga Creek, for example, it's a very large, significant portion of the city, but those modeled sections only reach so far up into those watersheds, so it's difficult sometimes to know. Some places are flood prone, but they've not been modeled. So we are making those areas smaller, and those are still in development under phase 3. But phase 4, so we're identifying some under phase 3 currently. In phase 4, we will perform the modeling on these newly identified areas as we're going through that process. We will also be in the areas of Chattanooga Creek, where there has been a new stream gauge that's been installed on Chattanooga Creek. At this point, there's been no ability for the National Weather Service or any other agency to be able to predict when flooding was occurring in the Chattanooga Creek watershed area, and that was because there was not a stream gauge there. We have partnered with USGS in order to have a stream gauge put in place. However, it's not currently calibrated and connected to the modeling that's been done, so we will be extending that model. That will be another element of this contract, so that that can provide some better information, so we can provide information as well as the National Weather Service on when flooding events may occur. And then there are some new modeling products that the Corps of Engineers has been developing, and we're particularly interested in those as it relates to both Chattanooga Creek and North Chickamauga Creek, because they tend to experience much different fluctuations than some of the other creeks that we have. And so these are some real-time simulation models, which actually help out with some of those. So this will provide for some development of those because those watersheds do experience such a rapid fluctuations. And then the last two elements. One has to do with providing some additional information on a database of buildings, whether it's residential or non-residential structures, and what are the floor elevations associated with those buildings. TVA uses a lot of that information in their damage assessments that they perform, but their information is very limited to a very narrow section that is directly impacted only by the Tennessee River. However, we know that those impacts, and they actually help solve and prevent flooding problems outside of just the Tennessee River area. So we're going to be providing that information. It will also be beneficial for the city as well in knowing what structures are liable to be impacted as floodwaters rise. And then lastly, there's a development of an online web viewer so that all of these deliverables, we've had a lot of information and a lot of things that have been built and developed so far, but putting those into some useful tools so that the public can easily see those and be able to tell and determine, what is it that they can expect to impact, what are some current conditions that are being experienced. So that's quite a bit, both in terms of the history as well as what we have planned for this upcoming phase.
Got a question on North Georgia. When it rains hard in North Georgia, coming this way to South Chickamauga Creek, and I think in 2003, it might have been before then, we had a big flood. I mean, we had things flooding out, water above golf courses, or not golf course, but range was flooded out. By doing infrastructure now, how is that going to affect? It was bad then, but you got infrastructure going into the same area where it was just water, but now it's buildings and houses and whatever. Do they look at that? And also, do they look at when the river go above the creek? Because the creek goes into, South Creek goes into the river. But if the river goes above, does it go backwards and then cause more flooding damage? Are they looking at that also?
Yes, both of those situations, in terms of the additional development, regardless of where it is in the watershed, whether it's in, so these that's a great point, in terms of the Georgia development. None of these studies, while the results of where flooding occurs is focused on Chattanooga. In order to determine that, they have to look far beyond both Chattanooga and in I think almost every watershed also reaches beyond Hamilton County as well. And so they actually have to look at what development patterns are happening, and then how those fit in and how they make sure that they are appropriately factored in and accounted for in that. So that is part of the standard process. That actually is a process that is established by FEMA. And so what the Corps of Engineers is doing for us is performing that information to the FEMA standards for that portion. And as far as TVA's work, TVA operates and controls the dams, and they perform the flood control portions. So they have certain ways that they operate. They have provided to the Corps of Engineers in a 100-year event, this is what you can expect those levels to be. And so the Corps of Engineers has used that to determine, as you indicated, when the river is higher than the creek, that water will flow backwards, and that's what we refer to as backwater flooding. And so that has been accounted for. These flood studies will show, they don't make a distinction on the map to tell you whether it's backwater or headwater flooding, but they will show whichever one is creating the worst case scenario is what will be shown, so that the people understand what their risk is, regardless of which direction the water comes from. So that way the public is not dependent on understanding whether it's heavy rain in Georgia or is it heavy rain in East Tennessee that causes the river to rise. They just need to know if someone says you're going to experience a 100-year flood, they can find a map and be able to depict and determine, is their house located in those risky areas or not.
Do they give us information to help us decide how can we help keep from this from happening, or do they give recommendations of what we need to improve on to keep the flooding from happening?
That has not been the focus of these studies, and the reason for that is because we're trying to make sure that we've got the best information for where these are going to happen. There are separate pots of money that the Corps of Engineers can make available, but we have to identify specific projects first, and those go through a separate authorization process. So that's the reason why that's not been included here, because most of the times those are very specific in terms of what they are. There is less of those dollars available today than what there was at one time, but it would have to be a project similar to the scale of the levee, for example, which would be a large undertaking. Anything smaller than that would typically be something that the city would undertake. And we do have contracts in place with a variety of consulting firms that we draw upon their expertise when we have those localized events that come up that we need some analysis that we don't yet understand.
And Justin, with them,
Wait.
I'm
That's
guessing
the fourth or fifth question. I got other questions here.
I'm sorry. You come back to me.
Okay, come back to you. Okay, that's great. Councilperson Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Are we able to see, or do we have access to phase 1, 2, and 3? Or 4? The other
I'm
phases
sorry,
that you've done?
yes, those deliverables is all information that we have. Some of it is in electronic form that runs inside the modeling program. Some of it is at the time that those were undertaken, because this has been ongoing now for many years. Some of it is in a bound book form as far as reports and whatnot. But there is a significant amount of information that's already been produced.
How long has this study been going on?
We embarked on this. I can't remember what the exact year was, but it was after the 2010 flooding in Nashville happened. We watched what happened there, and I know everyone on our staff was, of course, it was very devastating to see what happened there because they experienced a 500-year event. We also, at that point, recognized that it was very important for us to begin to look at things that the Corps, and so the Corps has been helping Nashville since that time. So we are working off of their experience of what happened in Nashville, and we've been building on that to try to utilize those same lessons learned here and provide the best information. In some cases, some of this really is about trying to get the best information we can about what the risk is and what the timing of it might be so that we can best respond to it.
And how many more phases do we have, or do you anticipate we have?
Honestly, that's probably one of those things. Looking at it now, I probably would have been better off if we'd never put a phase on it. We knew it was going to be more than one. There is not necessarily a defined end to it, and part of that is because technology changes. When this project first started, the idea of online web deliverables and sliding scale maps was very much in its infancy and was not anything that was really perceived that could be very easily done because it was very labor intensive and hands-on. Much of that has automated, so I would imagine this is, in many ways, this will come to, the bulk of it will come to an end, but we will always be refining this because it will always be necessary to do so from a combination of additional development that continues to occur, whether it's inside or outside the city, as well as just as the additional technology and making sure that we're better responsive. Some of this will also create some spin-off projects as well in terms of how best to keep people safe in the locations where we know there are chronic problems that are, they're just so expensive to try to solve them. So how do we keep people safe and keep them out of harm's way?
Now, each phase that you enter, are we, the city, matching it 50% each phase?
Yes. These funds come from what the Corps of Engineers, it's been allocated to Congress under a program called Planning Assistance to States. They refer to it as their PAS dollars. And those PAS dollars are authorized by Congress at a 50% match. So we like to get, part of the reason for the timing on this is because we want to try to get first in line for the limited dollars that they have in this Nashville district. So by getting in and getting this in place now, we can go ahead and kind of get these dollars committed for us before some other projects show up. So we do try to stay on top of that.
Okay, so this is a grant that we would apply for every time you enter a phase, or is it just?
Typically, we've done it with every phase. They always have some dollars that are available. We have not always gotten dollars every year because most of these phases are dependent on the output from a prior phase. So we have used them to try to build on that. And so as the Corps is able to complete a portion of the work, and we then begin to look ahead and see what are the pieces, what are the gaps and the holes that we still need to fill.
Mm-hmm. Now, was this is my last question, Chair, the 50% match, was it already budgeted for? Did the council already approve it? Or because I didn't see anything come across the radar to say, hey, the city council is authorizing whomever to enter into an agreement of a grant, or do we not go through that process?
Well, there's not a separate grant process for the Corps of Engineers for this, and so it doesn't. What you wind up seeing from the Corps is this agreement that's in place, but the dollars for this are water quality capital dollars, and it's part of the annual budget that we've submitted and prepared that's already been approved by the council.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You want to push your button? Councilman Gilbert.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned Nashville. Will this study help us be prepared if a flood happens like it did in Nashville, to get the message out, which route to go and which route not to go if it's a flood?
That ultimately is one of the outcomes that we want to be able to have, is to be able to have this information and be able to put it in the hands of the Emergency Operations Center. So that way we will know where to anticipate those road closures are going to happen. We know that in general we know certain areas and we know what that timing might be, but all of those impacted locations we don't always know exactly where they are. But being able to understand, because right now we get such limited information from the National Weather Service, so that's the reason why we've developed this, is to be much more granular and at the city level for us, so that we can identify those things and we can stage those resources that are necessary, so we can close roads in advance or be prepared as that water level rises. So that is the intent, and certainly as that ability to be able to notify folks, that would be part of that process, is communicating those closures when they're needed. We've also, it's outside of this contract, but in terms of routing people, we have, in the last few months, I guess over the summer, we had a meeting with a vendor who's actually on one of the purchasing agreement contracts from the state, and they actually have some systems that are automated that we've been talking with them about some ways in some of these chronic places where we know the water rises. The road goes underwater, everybody's there, and you always have people drive off in that when they shouldn't. What are some automated systems to let people know about that in advance, or to alert them as they're driving up and approaching it that the water's there, without us having to physically go stage people and barricades, but what sort of things can we just put in place as part of the infrastructure? So those are also outcomes that we expect to put in place.
Appreciate it. That's good to know, because I know Nashville had an issue, a big problem, and we're on top of the game for us, getting ahead of the game for us. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's all the resolutions we have from Public Works. Is there any other questions or comments from anyone as it relates to it? You want to push your button? Councilperson Burrs.
Justin, I don't know if you got the message from strategic planning about the Jacobs report about water. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Did we ever locate the final report?
So I did get the message this morning. We started to try to locate that study. I got the message as I was coming up here that
Sure.
that was a part of your conversation. I haven't had a chance to review it with staff, and I want to do that. I have not done that yet, though.
Have you seen the document I'm talking about? Do you have your hands on the document?
Staff
I mean,
were-
you can have this if you want it. It's, I pulled it up.
Staff were getting a document together. I haven't personally reviewed it yet,
Okay.
but do plan on reviewing that and would be happy to come back to the council at some point with our team to talk to you about it.
Okay, this is not a criticism of y'all at all. The city has done a fabulous job. In fact, you all, I think, Bill, you worked with Jacobs on, you know what I'm talking about? It was this thing about the city wanted to assure that water service is available to its citizens at all times, and it's a draft report, water system interconnectivity, to avoid what just happened.
So,
Is that sounding familiar at all?
yes, Councilwoman, and Bill and I have talked about that this morning, but neither of us have had a chance to review that.
Okay.
It is a pretty dated survey or study that was in a draft form, so we need some time to look at that.
Okay, I was just curious about whatever came of it, was anything implemented? And to my knowledge, it wasn't you all, it was Tennessee American. And so I was just curious as to whatever happened with that.
Yes, ma'am. We certainly want to dive into that. We just haven't had an opportunity to yet. And
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning it.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, great job that you all have done in all your work on this.
Thank you.
I just think maybe we lost some, we're the victim of some unintended consequences that has nothing to do with you. You all have done a fine job. Just curious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. When do you think you can come back to us?
Give me a chance to look at the report, and can I call you, Mr. Chairman, and talk to you about that?
Yeah.
About a time frame, and then you'll have that for strategic planning next week?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Well, we'll check with the chair on it.
Oh,
I don't want to.
yes. Mr. Chair.
I don't want to be stealing his schedule. But yeah, call me when you
Mr.
got a
Chairman.
better idea about the time.
All right.
Councilperson Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Justin, when it comes to the right-of-way, do you all just have a crew that go out and mow it and cut it, or are constituents expected to report it?
So we have routine right-of-way mowing that is conducted on a schedule. Residents can call us for site distance issues. We do respond to, and a site distance issue would be at an intersection where there was a site distance issue to make a turn. We do go out and address those by calls. Sometimes not now because we haven't had very much rain, but during like last summer we were terribly behind with some right-of-way mowing. But residents can call to report those problems. It's also a systematic right-of-way mowing schedule.
I got an area that's on Lyerly, that's close by the Highlands Apartments, kind of close to 23rd Street. People have started dumping, like the grass has gotten severely high. So I can shoot you an email, or I can report it to 311 so we can try to get it mowed.
You can do either. I'd be happy to take an email from you and have a service request. Our crews respond pretty quickly to those.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions for Public Works before we move on to 2 resolutions with transportation? Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. Bailey, would you please read 7M?
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Transportation to enter into an agreement with and accept a donation from Park Ridge Medical Center Incorporated for the value of material necessary to install improvements to the intersection of Lyerly Street and Oak Street for the approximate amount of $10,000.
See no lights, but I'm just curious, what does improvements mean?
It's a refreshed crosswalk and pedestrian flashing beacon, which is the lights that flash when you press the button.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, how about N, 7N?
A resolution authorizing the Administrator for the Department of Transportation to enter into an agreement with SDP Corp. for construction services associated with the Transit Stop Accessibility Project, T15019-201, in the amount of $524,010.48 with a contingency amount of $52,400 for a total amount of $576,410.48.
Councilperson Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Just would like to know what the project consists of and where would it be located?
This is throughout the city, Councilwoman. This is a 5310 grant. 5310 is a federal transit agency grant program that provides funding for a number of things. One of the eligible categories is providing improved accessibility infrastructure to bus stops. So this is essentially mostly concrete construction to bring certain locations into compliance with accessibility. We've been working for a while with CARTA to determine, we analyzed a lot of data, including bus routes with high ridership, high boardings and alightings from buses, and also paired that with known locations that had accessibility issues. And so this project includes, I think, 15, I'll just read a few of them to you, locations that will be improved. 3 locations up in the west side on the hill near the Boynton and JC Towers, Greenway View Drive at Walmart on Brennan Road, Hamilton Place at Gun Barrel, Market at 11th, in the south part of Chattanooga in the Rossville area, at one of the, I can't remember right now, maybe that's the number 9 bus route, Glenwood at Citico, McCauley at Palmetto, 3rd and CSAS, North Point Boulevard, where there are a lot of alightings from the number 16 route, and so on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Bailey? Have you opened your bid for paving?
No, sir, we're getting there. We haven't advertised yet, Mr. Councilman, but we're getting very close. I am pushing my team to get us to that point.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
If there's nothing else, I believe, are we adjourned until 6 o'clock, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we are, sir.
All right, we're adjourned until 6 o'clock.